Welcome to postseason baseball. The Chicago White Sox begin their march to the World Series. Here to recap the big moments and analyzing the critical decisions is your favorite source of Chicago White Sox talk. This is the Sox Machine postseason show with your hosts, Jim Margulis and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to Sox Machine Live as it just passed midnight on Monday, October 11th, as the Chicago White Sox win Game 3 of the American League Division Series against the Houston Astros to keep their season alive. And I apologize for how weak my voice sounds. I am Josh Nelson alongside
for those husky tones.
the managing editor of SoxMachine.com. It is Jim Margulis. I just got back from Guaranteed Rate Field, and this is going to be the most loosey-goosey podcast we've ever done in our 8 seasons of the Sox Machine podcast, Jim, because I don't have much planned being at the game. And I was coming up with storylines early when the White Sox took the lead, and then when they fell behind 5-1, I was feeling doom sitting in the stands.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we got to talk about the guy who turned this season around after having a disastrous journey in right field in Game 2. Leury Garcia, maybe one of the more improbable home runs in White Sox postseason history, right behind Scott Visednik's walk-off in Game 2 of the World Series. That's the most improbable. But Leury Garcia, in a big way, saves the White Sox season.
I thought first you're going to say the guy with the cane turned the season around. I don't know if did you see him yet? Have you been able to know what that's all about?
So we get the first comment in our YouTube channel, Cane Man.
Yes. Have you been able to see it yet? Or I know how you were checking your phone.
The internet was really spotty at the stadium because there's over 40,000 people there. So I don't know what the Cane Man is.
There was a guy who was twirling his cane in a menacing way, pointing it kind of like a half wand, half rifle in the front row, I think behind, if I had the camera angle right behind the dugout on the first base side, and camera found him right before some big moments, and it was terrific. So yeah, it was, that was cool. The whole broadcast was cool. We could talk about that a little bit too, to save you some of your vocal cords, but yeah,
that'd be great.
Garcia's homer first it was remarkable, one, because he homered in a bat where he faced 2 different pitchers named Garcia. And that was
gotta
something.
Be a first, right?
Yeah. So he had Leury Garcia facing Luis Garcia, then moving on to Yimi Garcia. And, first of all, that was a really cool inning because all the White Sox lefties did damage. We talked about that pregame, talking about how, as good as Luis Garcia had been his rookie year, lefties had gotten him. And so what happened in that inning, Yasmani Grandal hit a 2-run homer. Yohan Moncada hit a line drive single, Gavin Sheets line drive single. And so everything was lined up for Garcia to do something. If he's going to do anything, that would be a great time, left side of the plate against a guy who could not get lefties out. And I thought it was a little bit of desperation on Dusty Baker's part to switch pitchers during the at-bat. Because usually you don't do that when things are, unless things are really dire or there's an injury. And I don't think you do that for a hitter like Leury Garcia. He's not the guy who scares you. So to bring in a second Garcia to face Garcia was a little bit confusing, or a little bit like too much flop sweat to me. Even if that might be how it looked afterwards, that might be revisionist history. But during the at-bat, I thought, that's seems a little bit rash, or a little bit like instilling, if not panic, that's not confidence you're instilling in your players. And sure enough, Garcia throws the third Garcia, Yimi, throws 3 fastballs, the third of which was piped, and Garcia sent it to hell basically off the batter's eye, and turned the game around. So it was great to see the White Sox turn a weakness into, capitalizing on a weakness with their strength, and then capitalizing further by taking what seemed like a panic-stricken decision and justifying that panic one way or another.
Yeah. In the stands, when Dusty Baker made that move, I attended the game with my future father-in-law, Roy. It was his birthday, so happy birthday to Roy.
Yeah. Very happy birthday.
His first postseason game ever as a White Sox fan. He's been a Sox fan since 1959. So
my
what
parents' anniversary as well, so everybody's celebrating.
Yeah, exactly. I looked at Roy and said, "This is a college baseball move." I see this happen all the time at college baseball when I'm watching these games for our draft coverage. And every time it happens, Jim, it always blows up in the face of the coach because you're giving no margin of error for the reliever that's coming in. You're down 2-0. So you throw two bad pitches because you just got on the mound and you walk the guy. And that complicates matters. And you're not in a rhythm. So for that's a tough spot for Leury Garcia to come in because there's already a lot of traffic on the bases. But the most surprising thing is that wasn't a cheapie. Leury Garcia destroyed that pitch. That was like a 430-some foot home run, and I know there's like some promotion going on for every home run hit over 425 feet, some cryptocurrency companies donating money or whatnot. Leury Garcia, out of all the White Sox hitters, is the guy who hit a 425-plus foot home run in that moment. And I don't know if I could put into words what the crowd reaction was when that ball hit the batter's eye. It was just an explosion of excitement, and it was deafening. I don't know how it sounded on TV, but being there, it was just deafening, and it just turned around. I mean, Yasmani Grandal's home run was huge. Finally, we get to see a home run, but the White Sox are still down 5-3. When Garcia's home run cleared center field, it just sparked hope for all the fans that were there that they could do this. We can now win Game 3, because when the Astros were up 5-1, I kind of felt like a Minnesota Twins fan of, well, this is what it's like to win a division easily and get swept in the postseason. And thanks to Leury Garcia, that didn't happen.
On TV, given the way the center fielder tracked it, it sounded loud. It sounded like good contact. But the center fielder tracked it pretty much all the way to the wall, so you think it's going to be close. And then the way it finished was not close. I don't know if, from your angle and from the stadium, did you know it was a no-doubter, or was it a no-doubter? Because, you'd know immediately if there was no doubt.
The way, the angle and the exit velocity, my first reaction was, no way. Like, he got all of that. Like, I was just surprised that Leury Garcia, crushed that. Like, it's a type of angle and exit velocity that I've seen from, like, Yasmani Grandal when he really gets into one.
Yeah.
Or Jose Abreu. I knew it was gone, but I just couldn't believe the source of who hit it. Yeah,
with, like, Grandal or Moncada, when they let go of the bat, you generally know they got it all. But with Garcia, he's got, like, the two-handed follow through, kind of whips around the box, looks ready to run. So you can't trust it. And by the time the camera cuts away from him, you don't know what he's doing or how he's running up the first base line, whether he's skipping or not. So you only have really the center fielder to trust. And he played it pretty straight until he ran out of room with like 40 feet of flight to go. That was incredible. I think the thing to me was like the Grandal homer, the way I often describe the White Sox offense when it's struggling to get the ball in the air and when it's kind of going base to base is constipated. Just a lot of grunting and time for minimal results. And so I guess if you're carrying that all the way through for to make it for maximum disgust, I think Grandal's homer would be the laxative. And then Leury's everything that happened afterward, just the relief and just, okay, this is a lead and a comeback, a counterpunch. That's what you really want to see. And then, I'm not sure what the mood was like in the park, but to me, when the White Sox fell behind 5-1, 3-1, and then 5-1, it seemed like the air was let out of the park. Yeah. But then when Garcia, hit the homer, gave him the lead, and then Kopech gave up the lead, that didn't see. I think the Kopech strikeout of Alvarez provided enough electricity afterwards. Like that did not, it was down, but still there. And Kopech's reaction, and even though he gave up the lead again, just getting that, getting out with the game still tied and having the, especially going through Alvarez to keep the game tied, seemed like it sustained the life enough for Hope to be, it wasn't on life support. Hope was still quite alive.
And then the fourth inning, I had no idea what the commotion was about with Yasmani Grandal because I'm sitting in section 155. And of course, Astros fans are in my timeline, be like, you totally know what happened. No, I don't, because I'm sitting right next to the left field foul pole. So from my angle, it just looked like Gurriel made a bad throw to home and it missed Maldonado and it goes to the backstop. I just thought it was a bad throw. And then I have to go to Twitter to see what the umpires are talking about. And then I see on just how far inside the baseline Yasmani Grandal is. So help me understand, Jim, what the rule is for a hitter as they leave the batter's box, establishing the baseline to first base. Should have Grandal been called out there?
Yeah, it's I'm looking at the I'm just searching for tweets because I did not find post game comment on that yet while I was writing the recap, because I finished the recap just about 5 minutes before we went on air. But just basically, it seemed So the ruling seemed to be that Grandal had the right to establish a baseline towards first base, and the way he broke out of the box, theoretically. He was early enough. And the funny thing, I mentioned this in the recap, that this was probably the second time this season where Grandal benefited from being as slow as he is. Because I think, we saw it against Cleveland in April when he had the throw hit his helmet on the way to second base because the 3-6-3 double play that normally would have been turned, most runners would have been sliding by the time the throw got to him. But because he was still 30 feet away from second base, he was still on his feet running. The ball hits his helmet, bounces in the left field, and chaos ensues. With Grandal, I think he was still probably far enough away from first base to where he could have still been taking a straight path from where he was to the base. When we normally see that kind of interference call, it's when the throw is being thrown from home plate to the catcher, and the catcher is usually within the field of play in front of home plate, and the base runner takes a last ditch step towards his maybe penultimate step towards first base is on the grass or in the field before hitting first base to cut the angle, and they say, well, he wasn't in the field of play. But I guess Grandal was so slow or far enough away from first that they were still trying to figure everything out. I guess the idea of a baseline was still mushy or something. It did seem, suspect, or at least, it seemed like the kind of gamesmanship or advantage that runners normally take. So it wasn't anything I guess, really sketchy by Grandal. But I think if they called him out, if they said he interfered with the play, you'd probably have to say, yeah, he was. but since the play was upheld, I guess you can say well, I guess you normally don't see that much. I don't know if that's inspires maybe they should, the next runner should take a cue from that and maybe take 2 steps forward towards the mound before breaking in, and then he bouncer towards the right side. Cause it did seem like a really generous interpretation of the baseline, but maybe Grandal just happens to be somebody he takes so much time to get to where he's supposed to be in the normal rhythm of a play that he just distorts things and creates rulings that normally wouldn't happen.
Well, we also learned in Boston you could just kick the ball over the fence if you need a ground rule double to prevent a run from scoring.
Yeah, that's
it's been a night for rules in Major League Baseball. Nobody knows what we're doing here, so I had to figure that out. But the BABIP regression that we saw in Game 2, making the comment every ground ball hit up the middle of the infield in Game 2 went the Astros' way. And when the White Sox did it, Jose Altuve's fielding in. in the fourth inning, it changed.
Mm-hmm.
Any ball in play the White Sox put in play, it seemed like it was going for some type of hit, like a swinging bunt, thanks to the Sod Father. As long as it stays fair at the beginning of a ground ball, it will remain fair. And Eloy Jimenez beating it out for an RBI single, and the White Sox lacing singles through the infield and getting those runs. And that, yeah, I mean, the first 4 innings of this game took over 2 hours, and it took a lot out of, as a fan, like just sitting there. It's like there's so much going on, and we're not halfway through this game.
Mm-hmm.
But while Leury Garcia is a big storyline, I think just as big is the jobs that Ryan Tepera and Aaron Bummer did tonight. And a cap tip to Tony La Russa. We were very critical of Tony La Russa, and rightfully so. He had a bad game 2, managing the White Sox. But I felt after Cease and Kopech and just getting a feel of how well Tepera and Bummer were throwing, that I think Tony La Russa having Tepera go 2 and Bummer get 5 outs, understanding how well they were throwing and challenging the Astros hitters, that was the right move by Tony La Russa. So cap tip to Tony, really coming through as far as the postseason experience that he was bringing to the White Sox, because you definitely see that in tonight's game. But from the player performance side, that was such a blessing to see Ryan Tepera and Aaron Bummer retire 11 straight hitters, when it just seemed like the White Sox, after the first inning of these 3 playoff games, could not shut down Houston, and they were able to do it.
Yeah, that was during the game, I saw fans, and then I jumped in on this saying, like, what if you rework the trade mentally so that the trade was Ryan Tepera and Craig Kimbrell for Nick Madrigal, Cody Hoyer, and Bailey Horn? Does that make it better? Does that kind of smooth everything over the way Tepera pitched? Because yeah, he calmed everything down. I think, I have a rough post in mind, or at least a template in mind for tomorrow morning whenever I get to it. It's just like a power rankings for all the figures in game 4. And I think he might be at the top of it just because he restored order and then he did it again. That was, I think, it was important to get that first inning, but then the second inning, I think, was just we haven't seen really 2 smooth innings this entire series so far. The first 2 games in Houston, Dylan Cease had and extended to game 3, like Dylan Cease had a great first inning, fell apart. Lucas Giolito had a great first inning, fell apart, or was just at least bumpy afterwards. They had a really hard time stitching together 2 innings. So the fact that he did it twice was incredible. And then Bummer being the good Bummer. And I don't know if you're seeing this on Twitter, Ryan Tepera's comments after the game. He said, Chandler Rome, I believe he's the Houston Chronicle reporter, yes, said White Sox reliever Ryan Tepera on the Astros, quote, "They've had a reputation of doing some sketchy stuff over there. We can say it's a little bit of a difference. I think you saw the swings and misses tonight compared to the first 2 games at Minute Maid." So he's stirring the pot a little bit.
Is he suggesting something weird is going on in Houston again?
Yes, and it's... I'm kind of telling they got 22 swinging strikes tonight. I'm telling what they did in the first 2 games here. Let's see, 9, 10, 11, 12 15 swinging strikes in game 2. So it's 22 to 15. Let's see, game 1 here. Sorry, while everybody listens to me just do arithmetic in my head.
Well, while you're doing that,
17 swinging strikes. So not a huge difference in swinging strikes, but high leverage swinging strikes, and the continuity from pitcher to pitcher to pitcher, who knows, but a little bit of theater at the very least.
Well, so for those that are missing the pregame shows that we're having on Twitter, which we'll have another one on Monday afternoon, around 11:30 a.m. Central Time, so we can do the pregame and set the table for Game 4 and allow everyone to get to the stadium in time, into their seats for Game 4, as first pitch is going to be 2:30 p.m. Central Time for the White Sox and Astros on Monday for Game 4, weather permitting. That's going to be a story tomorrow. Hopefully we'll get an updated forecast in the morning, and we'll report that on SoxMachine.com on how the weather's going to look in Bridgeport tomorrow. But shout out to our friend Beeflo from the 108, because it was you, me, and Beeflo previewing the Game 3, and he said that the White Sox need to figure out a way to strike out the Astros 12 plus times in order to win tonight. And the Chicago White Sox pitchers struck out 16 Houston Astros. And after Michael Kopech and Dylan Cease, the young guns, Ryan Tepera, Aaron Bummer, Craig Kimbrell, and Liam Hendricks did not allow a hit. They did not allow a walk. And they struck out 9. That is incredible. And if there is any way they can bottle that up for Game 4, they're going to force a Game 5 situation.
Yeah. It's, I think we're got a comment from Alex Rudd saying there are Sox fans that said they heard whistles during Game 1 and 2 before off-speed pitches. So it's going to be a subplot. It's going to be fun, especially, being another 4-gamer. Like, that could be some talk around the entire league. But when you think about it, just the entire Astros cheating scandal started with a meaningless game against the White Sox and Danny Farquhar in a game that they had no reason to bother. So if they, that's the thing about benefit of the doubt is when you do cheat so brazenly in a game where you have no reason to, what happens in, games where you think you have reason to, like, you just, whether it's true or not, like, you don't deserve any reason to think it's above board. Fans can say what they want, players can say what they want, and they just have to take it just because that's what they did. And it was so just brazen's a word that comes to mind. Just so bald faced that, it's ridiculous. But I think everything we said in the pregame show, though, I think we all come away looking pretty smart. Yeah, we said it was either going to be, Cease, pitching the game of his life, or a slugfest in order for the White Sox to win, because it was just going to be, the warm nights, wind blowing out, and we saw, Kyle Tucker and Yasmani Grandal hitting pretty cheap homers to left field, kind of wall scrapers. Didn't look like sure things off the bat, but just drifted over the wall. And then, Leury didn't need the win for his, but still just saw that kind of weird stuff happening to where needed strikeout. And I guess we all looked smart because it was a slugfest, but they got the strikeouts. So it fulfilled both ends of the games we envisioned happening. Just the strikeouts came really backloaded, and thank goodness they did. And I think if I were to pick a nit with the, I guess with LaRusse's bullpen management, once I didn't think Kimbrell's necessary, but he did pinch Kimbrell with the best possible situation where he only needed one batter with nobody on base. I was concerned he would start the 8th and they'd need to face 3 batters. What if 2 reach? And then what if Hendricks comes in and he's homer prone, and it's a 3-run game, and all of a sudden you're putting Hendricks' lone flaw in the position where it can actually ruin the game. So that's, I was afraid of Kimbrell for that. So to see him come in, I didn't want to see him at all, but to see him come in with only requiring 1 out and still having 3 runs, fine. Same thing with Hendricks pitching the 9th. I thought they could have spared him the entire 9th. That was Jose Ruiz territory at that point, but he only threw 10 pitches. I guess in the scheme of things, it's not terribly different from warming up and not pitching at all. So that's forgivable too. So the nice thing is with LaRusse's management, we can only nitpick small things. I guess that's redundant because nitpicks are necessarily small, but no major criticism. I think his hook on Cease was natural, understandable, kind of balancing the tension between really wanting to get something from him and then bailing just when you realize this could get out of hand. And Kopech did well enough, although Kopech, I think, giving up the homer and such, he showed that maybe he would have been a lock for calming things down in Game 2. So there's that. But after that, after Kopech got in and out, the decision to pinch hit Andrew Vaughn for Gavin Sheets was a natural decision against lefty, but still, just he did it. it worked great. Starting, Garcia and Wright worked out. I guess the idea of every left-handed bat against Luis Garcia panned out, even though he hit that homer against Leury Garcia. So yeah, that worked. So yeah, by and large, major successes for him, and the only quibbles are just that, quibbles. And he could have his reasons for doing it. And yeah, it's if like say game 2 was I'm not even, I'd have to think it through to give a letter grade, but say like DRF for game 2, this was B or A minus for it. I would say wasn't perfect, but pretty maybe A minus, especially given the stakes. let's throw an A on it.
You want to talk about the broadcast before we talk about game 4?
Sure. Yeah. I think, especially since the low bar the MLB Network broadcast set for being irrelevant and racist, just if not out and out, like very problematic and just, and at the very least, and to the point where in the first inning, before they finished the first inning, they made a comment that they'd apologize for later in the game, just like. Yeah, set a very low bar for Amin and Pierzynski, but the combination of Amin and AJ Pierzynski and Adam Wainwright was cool. One, because he had Adam Wainwright, not a hard hitting analyst. He tended to be very, his tendency was to praise the talent. I don't think he wants to insult anybody, but his default setting was to more or less remark on the great talent that's there rather than kind of second guess strategy. And I think that was a nice compliment to Pierzynski, who does like criticizing things and making, jabs if he feels like one's warranted. So that balanced out kind of the acid on one end and just kind of maybe too much sugar on the other. But when the game got wild, when you had the crooked numbers going back and forth, and you had the random batting average on balls in play luck, then you had the ball glancing off Grandal's shoulder, you had just all the wild stuff. They were enjoying it. You had 3 guys in the booth who were just all sounded like they were just enjoying it as much as the fans were. And when I guess when you think of, all the complaining and griping about the modern game that we saw on the MLB Network or the John Smoltz type, just the reflexive bitterness from John Smoltz, or like A-Rod saying nonsensical things, just trying to turn everything into a lesson and can't keep together like any, just nothing holds water that he says. Like, you just had 3 guys reacting simply, and smartly, but you could feel the emotion and just nobody really comprehending what's supposed to happen here. And especially Wainwright, since he's only done a couple games in a booth before, that he was just, his attitude was like, is this how every game is from this perspective? And so he was a good conduit for the fans being, just, if you threw a headset on anybody watching a game, they would have been reacting the same way. And while you might say that's kind of, on certain games that might reflect like a amateurish, fanboyish, meatballish, whatever you want to call it, like whatever the shortcomings are, putting a fan in the booth. Like this was like just reflecting like disbelief and awe and just, gobsmackedness, whatever you want to call it. They did a great job of articulating that. And what was funny was Pierzynski was criticizing Grandal for being in the baseline, or he was saying like, that he was saying that was kind of a heel move, and not without a self-awareness that Pierzynski would have done the same thing. Like, Wainwright was the one to say that. Amin was the one to say that. And people were kind of complaining that, Pierzynski was being a hypocrite. But then you think like within Pierzynski's personality is the capacity to pretend that nobody should do that. And of course that is not sporting to run within the baseline, because you think of, every heel, that's what they do. They pretend like they're playing within the rules. And then when the ref's not looking, that's when they bring out the foreign object or the blinding salts or whatever and turn the game to a farce. But of course he would say that that's not something to be done, because if everybody agrees that's something that isn't to be done, then the benefit of the doubt is there for somebody like him to do it. So there you go.
Oh, I was wondering about that, how AJ Pierzynski felt about Grandal.
It didn't make sense, and then it did. That's how I saw it.
Good old AJ. Good old AJ. All right, let's talk about game 4 as Carlos Rodon will be making the start for the White Sox again. We're going to be having a Twitter Space pregame show at 11:30 a.m. Central Time, so I'll be a little bit more prepared for that show than I am now coming back from Guarantee Rate Field after game 3. We did get this question from our YouTube comments from Jeremy, and Jeremy posed a question to us. Jim, I can't participate in Twitter Spaces while I'm at work, but my question for Game 4 is who is backing up Carlos Rodon? And then he wrote, gulp, is it Ronaldo Lopez?
I'm thinking if it's Lopez, it might be Lopez for the bottom of the order or something like that. Like if it's like Martin Maldonado or somebody, or one of the center fielders, maybe him. But I think, say like Rodon, knock on wood, he goes 3. I think the rest of the game, you're saying the ones they trust. Like I would say it's Crochet and up on the leverage ladder. I think it's Crochet against lefties, and then, whether it's Tapera for 1 or 2, Bummer for 1 or 2, you might see Hendricks for 2 or 3. Like I think it's just going to be survive in advance. So I don't think Lopez is there unless it like happens to break perfectly to where it's the bottom of the order, Martin Maldonado or whoever, and just like, okay, one bat, 2 outs or one, to where he only has to face one batter or gets 2 shots to get 1 out. Maybe that's the way they go. And then it's, high leverage guys from there, but I think it's crocheting up. That's how I would see it. And hopefully, Rodon says he's feeling good. We'll see. I mentioned on the pregame Twitter space that I was wondering if Rodon said he turned a corner just in case he never had to pitch this series and was saying like, oh, he's perfectly healthy going into free agency. He just never got the chance. So, maybe there's maybe a gulp here in line, like for whether Rodon can actually back it up, but I imagine he's fine. There's going to be some adrenaline that's not there. You just hope that between Rodon's his strike throwing, his grasp of the strike zone being more consistent than Cease's all year, because Cease, we've talked about with him, like he has the one inning where he can't get right and he just needs the round to be over. Like it's kind of like a boxing match where he's just up against the ropes and just trying to cover his face, basically. Just hope that he can stay up until the bell rings and he can go to the corner and get the treatment he needs from the staff. But it never came, and the leverage is too great, or the stakes are too great. He couldn't afford to ruin the leverage for anybody else, so he had to come out. But I think Rodon, he doesn't, even when he's less than his best, he doesn't have those innings where the control crumbles. We just haven't seen the inning. We haven't seen really any game where a team forces them out, except the Tigers in that one game where he is throwing in the high 80s. So I guess what I'm hoping from Rodon is that he can throw low 90s at the very least, maintain his velocity, maintain that extra fastball hop that he has, even when he's low 90s, and he's able to get through, hopefully one time through, maybe second time through if the handedness breaks right, 3 or 4. If he can get through 4, I think Tony La Russa has all the relievers he needs. Absolutely get through. I think if Rodon gets through 3, there's going to be some choices to be made on who gets 2. Whether it's how much I don't know about Craig Kimbrell. I hope he doesn't pitch, but how many batters you give to Kimbrell, what situation, whether it's another 1 out thing to just spare a guy, like maybe like Crochet gets a lefty out and then he's done by the time their righty comes up and Kimbrell can pitch. You don't quite know, but I think if you can get through 4, then it's Crochet against lefties, Bummer against lefties, Tapera can pitch again, and then Hendricks can pitch 2. He can maybe even pitch 3 if you want, but I think at least definitely 2.
We did get this question from Omar. Omar wrote to us, any chance Lance Lynn pitches on 3 days rest?
Possible, because I think, if it gets to a game 5, Giolito would be the game 5 starter and hope for better. But Lynn, I think maybe for an inning, if you wanted to pitch him an inning, it'd be better. I think I'd feel better about him than Lopez. For if he needed to, if Rodon, if Rodon's like a worst case situation where he goes 1 or 2 and you need an inning, like maybe Lynn for an inning would be okay. Because at that point it's all hands on deck. Try not to ask too much from him, but and it's also not it's at home versus, in Houston. So there is reason to think beyond just, fingers crossed that it would be better. But if Rodon can go 4, I don't think Lynn will be necessary.
Yeah, Rodon's got to live in the strike zone. We're going to talk more about this during our Twitter pregame show at 11:30 a.m. Central Time, which you could follow us on Twitter at Sox Machine. You can follow me on Twitter at SoxMachine_Josh. We'll host that. We'll talk more about the importance of White Sox pitchers clearly living in the strike zone, as we saw today in Game 3 in their win from the 5th to the 9th inning, on how Houston is mortal if you challenge them. If you walk them, and they'll take those walks, and then they hit a double, then things get messy in a real hurry. But if you challenge them, especially on the road, when whistles and banging in the trash cans don't work as well, they're not invincible. And hopefully that attitude goes into Game 4. And as Tony La Russa said after Game 2, he said a lot of things in that press conference that were not good. But I think the one thing that he said at the end of the press conference, from his experience back in 2004 watching Terry Francona speak to the media down 3-0 to the New York Yankees in the American League Championship Series, Terry Francona said, you just need to win one. And the White Sox won their one game tomorrow. They just got to win that game. And it was a really cool feeling to leave the stadium and, give credit to the Milwaukee Bucks fans for starting this trend. But there's a lot of White Sox fans chanting Sox in 5. And if they win tomorrow, Game 4, which I guess technically is today as we're streaming live after midnight on Monday. But if they can win Game 4, you're going to give yourself an opportunity to come from behind in this series and go back to Houston and try to win this in 5. But tonight was a fantastic night, and it was a whirlwind of emotions, one of the craziest games I've ever been to. If you follow us on Instagram, we're at Sox Machine. There's going to be more videos and photos of the stadium experience. So you can kind of, if you didn't get a chance to go, you can kind of live through that experience, because the introductions were really cool, and just the reactions of players being introduced and other big plays in the stadium. So those will be popping up on our Instagram. So you can live those moments that you didn't get an opportunity if you weren't at the stadium. But I hope to see folks at the stadium tomorrow. I'll be there again. Again, first pitch is at 2:30. Jim and I will have Sox Machine live after the game Monday night. And
one thing I'll add, though, is from the broadcast, is that I saw a lot of people remarking on just how awesome the stadium looked. Between the blackout, but just between the fans, White Sox postseason appearances are so rare that White Sox fans really want to be there. Like, just it seems like they're not used to it. They know how precious these games are, and they don't want to be the reason why the Sox lost. And it's kind of silly to say, but it's also just what are you going to do? Like, you're paying that money, you're putting your hopes on. Like, you want to scream your head off. You want to do that. You want to be a factor. You want to feel like you're being a factor. And that seems to come through. It comes through the TV. It seems to come through like neutral parties, like, national reporters, national observers, commentators, what have you, that have no stake in the game, have no stake in the fan base, just say that White Sox fans just sound different. And, we talked about, when Oakland's making all those appearances, and Oakland's crowd sounded rowdy. Like, that's, I feel like White Sox fans could develop the same reputation in their own way with their own signatures, just if they could get there more often. So you hope that they can, make it 2 for 2 with this homestand, just to reward the fans for showing, just to keep the excitement going. Because even, whatever happens, if they don't advance, if they can at least provide 2 crowd pleasers, fans saying like, that was the greatest game I've ever been to, whether they've been to one or the other, just feeling like this is like, I want to come back to this next year. Just, that's what they need to do this year. That's what they need to do it this whole postseason. The American League's good this year. The teams that are left are all good. So just, it's tough. Whoever emerges with the AL pennant will deserve it. But just, you want to give White Sox fans the reason, like, this was a good team. We're going to be doing this again next year. And more people are going to want to be there next year. And when you see it come through the TV like that, it's really impressive. It's really awesome. And, I was already, feeling like I was living vicariously through you and everybody else, and just going to, emphasize that more, if the more games they can win and do this.
And that's a great way to end this episode. Thank you to everyone that was watching the live stream as we got home and got our lives organized. It's currently 1 a.m. Central Time, Monday, so it's a great time to wrap up because we got an early morning to get ready for Game 4. But if you didn't get a chance to watch the live stream, you could watch episodes of Sox Machine live on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Sox Machine. If you don't get an opportunity to watch, or if you just want to listen, we always upload the audio recording of Sox Machine Live into our podcast feed, which you can subscribe to our podcast feed wherever you subscribe to podcasts. And again, follow us on Twitter. We're at Sox Machine. I am at SoxMachine_Josh, as we'll have the Twitter Space pregame show starting at 11:30 a.m. Central Time on Monday, getting ready for Game 4. If you just discovered Sox Machine, or if you've been a lurker or reading our content or listening to our content for a while, and you're not supporting us on Patreon, think about it, as we have we have several tiers of support starting at $2 a month. We also have annual plans that save you 9%, and our Patreon supporters get exclusive content. They get ad-free versions of both the podcast and website, and they get the first opportunity to purchase our Sox Machine swag, like our ball caps and our pint glasses. So if you enjoy our work and you want more, go to patreon.com/Sox Machine and sign up today. Sox Machine Live is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball, and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I am Josh Nelson. Thanks for watching and listening.